Good day, everybody, and welcome to today's webinar. This session will begin at the top of the hour.
Developing ATE strategies with our partners in the institutes. My name is Richard Gilbert. I am the moderator for this session, and if I'm lucky enough, as it is, the webinar details are shown, and I even have control of these slides, so we will proceed. It is being monitored so that people will get your questions at the webinar headquarters, and they will be forwarded on to us. Today we have a nice presentation. We have representatives from 3 different centers, and I, as suggested, will try to lead us along the path. And Mike Lasecki will be on board to pick up the intermediate connections. All right, so today, basic idea is that we want to continue our exploration of the ATE manufacturing and USA Institute interactions. We will provide an overview of the institutes. I will do that part of it, and the NSF ATE program. And then panel members will cover their ATE centers and the work that they do with the institutes. The Manufacturing USA Institutes are designed to increase competitiveness, facilitate technology transfer, and develop sustainability business models. Our particular focus is the highlighted goal that they have, and that is to help develop the technical workforce that will support the new technologies that come online because of the Institute activities. The institutes themselves are structured through primarily three federal agencies: the Department of Defense, the Department of Energy, and the Department of Commerce. There are 14 of these institutes currently operating. They have a public partner and private partner concept build in structure, and they receive a substantial amount of money from both sectors. There are more than 8 active institutes now, with the last one coming on just a month or so ago. This map provides an overview of these institutes and the states in which they impact. The green states are the ones that they impact, and starting across from the top at the far right hand, the left hand top is the ARM Institute. The next slide has a color code, and the color code focuses you on 2 shades of yellow or orange. The yellow ones are the ones that are involved with the ATE centers that you are going to hear from today. And the orange ones have projects with ATE. They just are not going to present those ideas today. Okay, the ATE mission started in 1992. It was legislatively enacted through Congress. At the time, there was as there is today, that concern that we have to stay globally competitive by having a high technology workforce that will meet the mission of strategic technologies as defined by Congress. So that's what the Act directed the National Science Foundation to do. And that program now is called the Advanced Technological Education Program. That program is involved with primarily connecting the American workforce to advanced technologies, and their mission is in the 2-year programs across the country, whether those are technical colleges or community colleges, and they are to make the ATE program is to make the connection from high school into these programs and then into the workforce with avenues to further engineering and technology BS degrees. They also are required to, each project and center is required to have some partnership connection to their specialization. And the pathways, again, at the bottom of that bullet are from 7th, if we allow 6th or 7th, depending on what state you are in, through a BS degree. The purpose is to take advantage of lessons that we've learned at the ATE centers and connect those to our partners. Some of those are provided here. That the thing that it works really well is to have the colleges hire adjunct faculty, have the industry also work with us to define the standards. It's very important to have the industry and advisory boards. The pathways to success depend on information that comes from the industry itself. And then integrating work experiences is extremely important to the whole process, because the mission of the ATE centers is primarily to put skilled, educated, and well-trained technicians into the workforce that they are specializing in. The way that you can get involved with the particular institutes in the United States is multifold. There are 3 ways. If you are a center, you can in fact use the supplemental routine, and that's information about that is available either to any of myself, for example, or primarily to Celeste in Washington. That's one way to do it. You can generate individual projects with ATE projects that have Manufacturing Institute partnership, or you can respond to what the National Science Foundation calls is a Dear Colleague letter, in which that format there is specific details as to what the National Science Foundation is looking for a project. Those particular responses are not time limited. The project, the ATE project mode, is once a year, and the deadline this year is just remember the last week in September to be safe. So if you're interested in the Dear Colleague route, all you really need to do is go to the ATE website at NSF, and the code number there is 16-007. Okay, so why should we work with the manufacturing institutes? Well, it's almost essential, because one of the things the institutes are being charged to do is to move the applied technologies that are in the applied research domain onto the manufacturing floor. And they are all working very diligently at doing that in their specialized areas. However, it is the ATE community's responsibility to make sure that any emerging technologies do get into the academic programs and the training programs, so that the technician that will be needed will be available. So that's a very big reason why we almost have to get involved. Right? There are opportunities there, of course. One of them is that each of these institutes is very focused on their mission, and they have the highest quality industry and research academic partners involved. And so they are definitely going to be able to have a knowledge of what the skill sets are going to be needed. What they don't have is how those skill sets are transferred into the 2-year and the technology programs. And that's why ATE is important in this process. You also will certainly have opportunities to get involved with industry partnerships. There are ways to increase sustainability by being involved with the institutes. The outreach opportunities depend on the institutes themselves and your outreach scenarios. And of course, ATE is always looking for ways to improve and increase dissemination. Okay, so we are moving out of this general phase, and there could be or are questions. I am going to mute my microphone so that there's no feedback, and then I believe Janet may be funneling questions.
questions that people are asking.
Okay.
Hi, sorry
I
about
didn't
that.
hear it.
At this point, we do have some people who are sending in some questions. And while we're waiting for those people to finish typing, I could let you know that most of the early questions have to do with recording links, and of course this webinar is being recorded, and all attendees will receive links to this recording and their slide presentation post-webinar. So we'll just wait for a moment. I see there are 2 people typing, so if we could just wait for just one moment. Okay, Richard, Holly Ann would like to know, do these projects have to be in credit-bearing programs, as stated on the NSF Gov funding program?
Okay, that's a very good question, and it does not have an immediate yes or no answer because of the structure of ATE. What has to happen relative to ATE's interest in supporting it, it has to meet the ATE mission. So credit-bearing programs have never actually been a deterring factor with the ATE program. It is expected that activity with a college, a community college, or a 2-year college working with the ATE program, that it is in a program. And so certainly many colleges, particularly technology colleges, may have credit-bearing and non-credit-bearing activities in their program. So I did not give you a yes or no, but I would be inclined to say yes, but as you pursue it a little bit more, you want to make sure that it's clearly connected to a program of study that may or may not include non-credit-bearing skills activities. Hopefully that is enough of an answer, at least initially.
Great. Well, Matthew would like to know, he's located in Washington State and is indicated as collaborating with one or more Manufacturing USA institutes. Is there a website, directory, etc., to easily identify the local in-state institutions which are collaborating with out-of-state institutes?
Okay, that's another great question that doesn't have a straightforward answer, but it's not too bad. The institutes themselves maintain websites where they, with their college partners and their high school partners and any non-industry partnerships. So one way to do that is to click on the institute. You do have to have in the back of your head the focus of the technology that they're working on. The other way is through NSF ATE itself, and that's NSF Central. They will have information that connects, besides what you're going to hear today, information about ATE's interactions with the Institute. So there are 2 search engines that you have to sort of look through, but both of them are pretty narrow, and hopefully, although there is a lot of activity with a couple of the centers in Washington State, you already know your interest. You do not have to be in a state where there is an institute, as long as the institute has a broader mission. There are 2 that have regional missions, and that one of them doesn't happen to include Washington State. But I think it's more constructive if you just take a quick sweep through all of them, and you will easily tell the ones that have a national mission and a national participation. Hopefully
That's
that's
great.
a
Okay, well, let's proceed. If other people have questions, please feel free to add them to the chat box. And at our next question break, we'll be happy to try and answer them for you. So,
okay. Thank you very much. So we will proceed to the first speaker, and I think I'm trying. Yes, she's on board. She's mute right now, but Dr. Sala is a dean at Baker College, and they have some interesting interactions with both ATE through the optics activities that ATE supports and the Institute. So hopefully I can just say, take it away, Anka, and I will mute, and hopefully that's what's going to happen.
Thank you very much, Richard, and hopefully everybody can hear me well. Good afternoon. So I will be speaking about OP-TEC and AIM Photonics. So first of all, OP-TEC is the National Center for Optics and Photonics Education. It's a consortium of 2-year colleges, high schools, universities, national labs, and industry partners funded by the NSF ATE program. The goal is to create pipelines of highly qualified and strongly motivated students who will become optics and photonics technicians. The headquarters for OP-TEC are in Waco, Texas, and you can see here on the map that there are about 33 colleges across the United States who have programs in optics and lasers. So the goal is to teach students lasers, optics, and photonics. OP-TEC provides curriculum, instructional materials, workforce needs assessments. Also, they are involved with faculty development and developing student recruitment strategies and tools. And OP-TEC serves as a national clearinghouse for photonics teaching materials. Their work is in encouraging more schools and colleges to offer programs and courses and career information in lasers, optics, and photonics technology. And they do this also by helping high school teachers and faculty from community and technical colleges to develop programs and labs to teach these topics. The next slide is about AIM Photonics. So AIM Photonics is one of the manufacturing institutes. The name comes from American Institute for Manufacturing Integrated Photonics. This institute was formed in 2015, and the headquarters are in Rochester, New York. And you can go to the website, aimphotonics.com, to get lots of information about the institute. It is also, as all the institutes, an industry-driven public-private partnership. And the goal is to focus on developing the technology called integrated photonics. And AIM Photonics aims to create this national infrastructure for manufacturing what is called PICs, photonic integrated circuits, and make this infrastructure accessible widely and flexible. And so the mission of AIM Photonics is to advance the technology for manufacturing integrated photonic circuits and provide access to state-of-the-art fabrication, packaging, and testing, so that small to medium companies can have access to this advanced technology, same as academia and government. And developing the workforce is one of the very important goals. This workforce should be adaptive, capable of meeting the industry needs, and capable of increasing the competitiveness of the United States in this area. And also it will participate in commercial, defense, and civilian agency projects related to the technology. So how is OP-TEC working together with AIM Photonics? So OP-TEC from the very beginning was actually proactive in supporting the efforts to establish such a manufacturing institute. In October of 2014, before the institute was formed, the lead officer for the ATE program asked the PI of OP-TEC to coordinate the efforts of the 3 photonics educational centers. There is a national center, and there are also 2 regional centers in photonics. So these 3 centers, together with the Advanced Materials Center and the Nanotech centers, so they came together to offer services, curricula, courses, teaching materials, and other networks to support the consortia that were competing for the award. And and to participate in identifying resources for workforce development, which is, as Richard mentioned, very important to the NSF ATE program. Once the AIM Photonics Institute was formed, OP-TEC became a member of AIM Photonics, and also NIATEC, which is the Northeast Advanced Technology and Education Center and ATE Regional Center, they are also a member of AIM Photonics. So some activities that have been going on OP-TEC has participated in webinars and presentations. OP-TEC itself has presented in these webinars organized by AIM Photonics and also was a participant in them. And then some other activities that took place. OP-TEC developed skill standards for integrated photonics workforce development. And OP-TEC also has commissioned a textbook on integrated photonics for technicians. A textbook that can be used by community and technical colleges and also universities who want to teach such courses in this new advanced technology. So let me talk a little bit about the integrated photonics skill standards. Skill standards are used to document skills, knowledge, performance standards that employers require from their workers. And so once these standards are created, they are made available to education and training providers such as community and technical colleges. And this way they will support the colleges to develop curricula and course contents to meet the needs of the employers. So when OP-TEC started looking into the integrated photonics field, they identified two types of integrated photonics technicians. The first group would be technicians who work in the wafer fab using equipment for that. And the second one are the integrated photonics test and assembly technicians. And OP-TEC has focused on developing skills for the second category, for the test and assembly technicians. So these technicians are responsible for operation and maintenance of equipment that is used to test wafers and to interpret the results. Other technicians work in the assembly and packaging of photonic integrated circuits. They are responsible for operation and maintenance of equipment to test the circuits themselves. And also the technicians need to have an understanding of failure analysis and reliability to help with diagnosing failures in parts and in systems. Generally, these technicians are going to work in a clean environment, which is going to require personal equipment and clothing such that the level of contamination is kept under control. So OP-TEC has found that there are 10 critical work functions and tasks that integrated photonics test and assembly technicians need to be able to perform. And so these are listed here, and I'm not going to go through all of them, but you will have the slides later. So they run a gamut of diverse functions, testing, assembly, and so on. So the next activity that took place is the textbook that was written. I was actually the author of this text. I worked with OP-TEC for that. It's Integrated Photonics for Technicians. So what is important about this is that this book really is geared at the level of a technician. So there are many textbooks, but they could be for people who have more advanced knowledge. But this is the first time that we came up with a book which is specifically written for technicians. And so it provides an introduction and overview of integrated photonics, the principles and applications. You can see here in the figure an example of such an application, which is a lab on a chip. And this will be extremely helpful in diagnosing various medical conditions in a very cost-effective manner. So this book, in order for this course to be adopted, students would have to have a bit of a prerequisite in light and lasers. And for this, OP-TEC has developed a course called Introduction to Light and Lasers, a very successful one that they had for a number of years. So once people go through that, they would be able to go into the field of integrated photonics. The book is made out of 5 modules, and generally all the OP-TEC developed materials are like that. And you can see what is in each module. So these are the 5 modules. The first one describes what photonic integrated circuits are, what are the materials that they are made of, and what are the fabrication technologies. And so then the next modules talk about specifically photonic integrated circuits made out of silicon. This is a very promising material. It's expected that this will dominate all these peaks. There are also peaks which are made out of semiconductors and out of dielectric and polymer waveguides. And finally, the last module is about how the peaks come together and are integrated into more complex systems. There is a lab experiment manual which is still under development right now, but it's going to be ready to accompany the textbook. And so colleges and universities that are interested in this can get this textbook through OP-TEC. And it will be used in the summer of 2017 for short courses which are offered by AIM Photonics Academy. And just one last comment, this course can be taught obviously as part of photonics programs, but it's also appropriate for electronics, nanotechnology, mechatronics, and advanced manufacturing programs. And I believe that this is my last slides, and so now if anybody has any questions, I'd be happy to answer.
Okay, good. So I'm also looking at the question chat board, and I don't see anything just yet. Janet, is that correct?
That's correct,
All right.
Richard.
So in the interest of time, and that will also give us some more discussion time with the panel, let's proceed to the next presenter. Dr. Hartley has an interesting role that she will share with you relative to the Institute and her ATE Center. So Rebecca, I am going to stop talking and mute my microphone, and I think you then will be in charge of the slides.
Okay, thanks, Richard. Thanks, everyone, and good afternoon. Again, my name is Rebecca Hartley. I am the Chief Workforce Officer for the Advanced Robotics for Manufacturing Institute, or also the ARM Institute. And as Richard mentioned, I also have an affiliation with NSF ATE through Clemson University. I'm the Director of Operations for the Center for Aviation and Automotive Technological Education, using virtual e-schools, which you may be familiar with as CAVES. And so Clemson became involved with the ARM Institute from a faculty standpoint through their robotics and automation research. And so because we had an NSF ATE center at Clemson, we were also approached about being involved in leadership of the ARM Institute, which is how we've made that connection. So I want to give you an overview of the ARM Institute because, as Richard said, we are we're one of the 14 institutes, but we are the 14th institute. So we have not had any project calls or any projects or any research that we can discuss at this time about our milestones and deliverables. So this is the map that Richard showed you earlier. You can see the ARM Institute is on the top left of this map. And I think it's also important to mention just a couple of things that to follow on with what Richard gave you in terms of some of the stats on the Manufacturing Institute. But this is a significant public-private partnership in the U.S. It had 118 bipartisan supporters in Congress. The institutes have over $700 million in federal funding, which has been matched by over $1.4 billion in non-federal funding. And so that includes 1,300 companies, actually over 1,300 companies, universities, and nonprofits in more than 40 states. So this is a very impressive group of institutes that are coming together with a significant backing by the U.S. So the ARM Institute is headquartered in Pittsburgh. It was established in early January, or in middle of January, funded by the Department of Defense, and it is $80 million is the funding from the federal government, and then there is $173 million in cost share from industry and stakeholders. And this would bring the Institute to a projected amount of $253 million. So the funding just to clarify, is a combination, in that cost share is a combination of actual dollar amounts and in-kind funding. And so one thing that I will clarify that you might have a question about, and we can discuss more in the panel, is in the cost share, all of the project calls that come out, so we'll have a cost share portion from those who are answering those project calls. So essentially, the institutes put out a call, an interested institution, ATE center, nonprofit will come back with a white paper, which would be their proposal idea. They will have a required cost match in that proposal, and then some dollar amount funding match would come from the institute. But those project calls will be a mixture of different topics related to the theme of that institute. So one unique component of the ARM Institute is the Regional Robotics Innovation Collaboratives. And you can see on this map the larger green dots are where each of those is hubbed. So we have 8 at this time with the potential to probably move to 12. This is an excellent way for ATE centers to be involved at a regional level, because each of the RICs, as we're calling them, would be in proximity to your area and where your industry and other academic and nonprofits partners are. So some of the directives of the RICs are to recruit membership from their region, particularly with small and medium manufacturers, startups, and other workforce training providers, advertise the ARM objectives, to provide workforce training, which I'll talk with you a little bit more about at the last couple of slides of this presentation, and to provide input for developing ARM's technology and education and workforce development roadmaps, and also providing training suggestions and how ARM can better serve its membership. So the ARM Institute focus areas are to advance technology development in robotics and automation, create this national ecosystem that I just showed you on the previous slide, and to provide education and workforce development training. And developing training opportunities and a pipeline of qualified skilled workers in advanced manufacturing is one of the most significant directives that the DoD has given for this institute, and something that has very much been at the front and center since the initial proposal. The ARM Institute mission, as you can see by this graphic, is to empower the American worker around these types of career paths, create and sustain jobs in robotics and automation, enable small and medium manufacturing, and also to establish robotics leadership, particularly in the U.S. And so you might ask why the Department of Defense is so interested in robotics. They do believe that a strong robotic or a strong manufacturing base translates to a strong defense, and robotics will make future military equipment. So you can see from this graph, and hopefully when we share the slides you can see it a little better. I know it's probably a little small, but you can see the market projections for 2025 with military use of robotics being the leading spender. So this is a critical area for the Department of Defense. And then lastly, I just wanted to talk with you a little more specifically about education and workforce development objectives. The Institute is very interested in establishing an educational partner network to promote broader participation in ARM certification and educational programs, and also develop or market better what is already available in industry recognized stackable credentials, or even an ARM endorsed type credential. This is going to be based on membership feedback from industry, but also this is a lot of the conversation that came out of our initial road mapping sessions that we had in Pittsburgh back in March and April. So folks are very interested in having a more customized curricula around robotics and automation. So that might be something that one of your centers has already been interested in doing or putting together, and so that might be a discussion that we can have about that. The Institute is also ready to inform, educate, and support small and medium manufacturers through broadening the networks of industry involved in education and workforce development programs, as well as train, certify, and offer internships and apprenticeships to students and educators. So this would be through more awareness of advanced manufacturing careers that we hope to provide through our education and workforce development programs. And finally, addressing diversity through research-based STEM and industry-recognized ARM certifications, which I know is one of our mandates and most interesting parts of what we do through NSF ATE. And then also looking at ARM's intentions to solve industry-relevant challenges by accelerating the deployment of advanced robotics technology in manufacturing, while also ensuring an innovative and well-trained workforce. So ARM has a variety of partners and plans to disseminate the programs and learning materials to be shared regionally through those RIC locations that I showed you earlier. So some of those groups that have already expressed interest in doing this would be our MEP counterparts at NIST, also NSF ATE centers that have been involved in the ARM proposal and initial institute startup, Carnegie Mellon's Robotics Academy, including First Robotics and an all-girls team called Girls of Steel, which is also located in Pittsburgh, and other robotics teams at a K through 12 level have been identified for ARM to partner with. We're also going to be working with the Manufacturing Skills Standards Council, or MSSC, as well as the National Urban League and the Center for Automation, Technologies, and Systems, which is out of Rensselaer Polytechnic Institute. So these relationships create the ability for a well-timed dissemination of the digital learning tools that will be coming out of the Institute. And these can be provided to a broad and diverse population of our next generation workers in advanced manufacturing, robotics-focused industries. So I'm going to open up for questions about the ARM Institute. Anything that you have questions about in terms of the overview or the objectives from a workforce development standpoint.
Okay, thank you.
Hi.
I believe if you look, you will see that Kathleen Adams has a question relative to the ARM, and I will turn my mic off and let you address that one. I presume you can see these same.
I can. Thank you, Richard. So Kathleen, you asked about composites, and that is one of the that is one of the technology thrust areas within robotics, which is kind of a natural transition. So there is another manufacturing USA institute called IACNI out of Knoxville, and they are also working with composites. So their workforce development lead and I have some initial conversations about how we might be able to share some of our curricula so that our membership is, looking for something specific to robotics, but they might also be interested in seeing something with composites, or also up with LIFT, which is the Lightweighting Metals Institute. We've also been in discussions with their workforce development manager so that we can talk through how we might combine some of these curricula ideas and internship opportunities for students that are interested in robotics but would also have some interest in some of the other technology fields.
Okay, thank you, Rebecca. I think NIMS is connected across a lot of things, but it hits your institute pretty hard. Can you handle the next question? Actually, the next two.
Yeah, I definitely know the answer to Vicky's question. I Kelsey, I am not sure if I do know that question at this time, but I can likely have some information to get back with you. And if you can give me your contact information, or you can contact me through mine that was just on the webinar.
And as extra support there, we have a lot of, through our center in Florida, a lot of connections with NIMS and working with their credentials. So feel free to contact both. Let me move our eye back up the chat window to the question about the institutes putting out calls. The answer to that is maybe. They certainly will make public announcements about their needs. Whether they are specific calls is an I don't know. The idea about establishing providers, and the institutes do that. They do that on the research side, and I suspect they will also do that on their workforce development. But those providers probably will be to give them the needed support structure skills, at least on the workforce side. So I think they will be looking to experts to provide project input as opposed to being providers. And I can put Rebecca back on the spot there to see if I paraphrased what you guys are going to do or not.
No, you did. I mean, you did a great job with that. And I will say that for a lot of the institutes, they have included an education and workforce development component with each of the technology or the technical project calls. And we'll also be doing that. But the Chief Technology Officer and I had a discussion early on about the ARM Institute, and we would like to include education and workforce with technology, but we might not make it a requirement as some of the other institutes have done, so that we can open up some broader categories for robotics and automation EWD project calls. I think so. So I guess what I'm saying there is we are going to have some separate calls so that we can open up to some broader topics. We're really looking at some of the foundational pieces for robotics and automation, and we're also looking to get some ideas that we have not thought about yet. So we might have some open calls. And Vicki, I think you specifically asked about community college partners, and if ARM would put out some requests for those. Absolutely. Those folks are involved in those regional robotics collaboratives that I mentioned earlier, and a lot of two-year colleges are involved in four-year colleges in terms of co-directing those collaboratives. So community colleges will be very involved. Celeste Carter has been very involved with the institutes from the beginning, as well as Marilyn and Richard. So yes, the two-year college and the technician education programs are on the forefront of the workforce development initiatives through the institutes.
Okay, Russ, we'll take yours as the last question in this little piece and move on. But do the institutes charge CCs, meaning community colleges? Now, this is an interesting question, and the answer is maturity. The very early institutes did, and probably still do. The ones that are younger, meaning closer to starting yesterday, either have some sort of interaction, so there's value added to both sides, or there is at least a activation barrier token fee to make sure that college really wants to be involved with the institute. So I think you probably should presume that the college does have to become some sort of affiliate member, but read the fine print on the Institute's website as to what that affiliation does require. Okay, so let's take a
Richard, just one second. Richard?
Yes, go.
I'm sorry to interrupt. This is Anka. I just wanted to mention that AIM Photonics does not have a charge for community colleges to be members. So that's the only category of members that they don't have a charge for them.
And same with ARM
Okay.
also, is what they're looking for in terms of a cost is your in-kind contributions.
Okay, good. So most of the, at least the response on the panel is that you're more likely to become a member at no dollar, but certainly an energy cost. The institutes want colleges that really want to get involved with the technologies that the institute supports. All right, so let's move on to Maryland, and I think I will do what I did the last time, is turn my mic off, and then you will have access to the.
Okay, good afternoon, everyone, and I'm happy to bring up the end of this conversation. Some great questions from the audience so far. We appreciate those. My mic is giving some feedback. Let's see. So I'm the Executive Director and the Principal Investigator of the Florida Advanced Technological Education Center for Manufacturing. And just a little bit about our center. A lot of it is similar to OP-TEC, which you heard about earlier. Our mission and vision is just to be the best resource for the education of manufacturing technicians for the state of Florida. So that means the high school and community college programs, the 2-year technician programs across the state are our focus, and making sure that we can produce enough technicians to meet industry's needs and that they have the skill sets that industry requires. And of course, we all know that that is a moving target. So a little bit of details about the center. We did that first bullet. We're housed at and hosted by Hillsborough Community College in Tampa, Florida. So a little Florida geography there. HCC is I'll get my pointer. Maybe let's see if I can do that. Well, it's right there in the middle of the West Coast. I'll just move on. We've worked with closely with the Department of Education, which oversees the standards and benchmarks for our technical programs in the state, and with the colleges themselves, and then all of their industry partners to develop a curriculum that was robust and would meet industry needs across the state and in different manufacturing sectors. So different aspects of the manufacturing and production industries in different parts of the state, are slightly different, and we work hard with the colleges and industry partners to make sure that no matter what those fine differences are, we can meet those needs across the state. So as I will beat the NSF ATE mantra one more time, we do in order to build those best programs in the 2-year technician education arena, we do a lot of work to make sure we have that great curriculum that meets industry needs and supports students. We do professional development for the educators, so I could talk to that a little bit as well in OP-TEC, and we also do a lot of outreach and recruiting because we still have a lot of job openings in the manufacturing companies in our state and across the nation that we need to fill with technically competent workforce. So I see my little thing up there finally. Okay. So, and I think Rebecca identified this particular slide or talked to some of the information here, that there's a really strong overlap between the goals and mission of the ATE program and what I call those first 2 steps in the kind of spectrum of the technical workforce. The institutes have a broader image of the workforce, or they're looking at a larger part of the whole workforce from K to gray, spending some time and energy in their workforce and education initiatives on the graduate and undergraduate research ideas, supporting some postdoc researchers and that kind of that level of workforce. But they do have a focus on making sure that the we get enough students in those pipelines down through the K-12 system and into the community college technician programs. So there's great overlap, and part of the reason we're a good target for that dear colleague letter that Richard mentioned early on in this webinar. There's our overlap. And so now a little bit details about how we've worked with some of the institutes. As a manufacturing center, it became obvious to us that this was going to be, the institutes would be a source of new technologies that were coming on board in industry, and presumably at a faster rate because there were a lot of investment was being made both from the public and private organizations. And so we thought that we needed to really be aware of what was going on and should start looking at what different areas the institutes would be focused on and how that would impact potentially curriculum for our in our colleges and in our high schools as well. So some of the kind of work we did before different awards were made of the institutes, we were asked for the similar to what you heard before, some letters of partnership and commitment to work together from different institutes. At one point to be the community college workforce lead, which was similar to Rebecca's role. Helping them define what technician workforce strategies they might engage in during their writing their proposals for the institute, and suggestions and information about professional development, outreach, and how and where are new technologies integrated into kinds of programs of study at different levels. And there are also some interest in the broad, by the institutes, by various institutes, and the broad networks of college partners that we had as a good way to disseminate some of their materials and information and new technologies as well. So that was another strength that the centers had and that we were approached for that particular aspect of our center. And then afterwards, there's been a lot of especially in the newer ones, just sitting on the education and workforce advisory committees and trying to make sure that the two-year technicians are involved in the conversation, as Rebecca talked to this point, I believe. And also trying to figure out where in the time spectrum, the timeline of the institute, there really will be a need for technicians, and that certainly depends on the maturity of the technology that the institute is addressing. So I think robotics is right there and ready to jump in for some that kind of two-year technician in K to 14 workforce development, whereas some of the other institutes are focused on technologies that are not so well defined as yet, and maybe a few years before they're ready to really focus on that technician workforce level. So some of the partnerships, just to be specific, that we're involved in, we did respond to the Dear Colleague letter and have a supplemental to work with Power America. Their focus is wide bandgap technologies and in the arena of professional development. So we've sent some faculty to their community college level workshops there, and I've done a few things in that area for Power America, or with Power America, I should say. New to one of the new institutes is called ARME, which is not ARM, which Rebecca was involved in. This is the Advanced Regenerative Manufacturing Institute, and it's housed in, if you were to look back at the map, in New Hampshire. And it's about regenerative tissue, so growing tissue, etc. We have a strong research hub here in Florida, and we've been asked to host the first Community College Workforce Summit, which may be as soon as this fall, and also sit on their Workforce Advisory Committee. And with FOA, which is the Fabric Institute out of MIT, or housed at MIT. We sit on that advisory committee which is very active. They are one of the institutes that have required a workforce component in all of their calls, I believe. That was the last round. And so we work together to draft what the workforce component would look like in that call, what those workforce requirements would be. And currently, we're also working with NextFlex to a partnership for some high school curriculum around entrepreneurship. So I guess before I close, I'd like to just point out some challenges that we've run into in the last year and a half or 2 years working with some of the different institutes. This alignment with the technology roadmap and when and where the technicians might need new skill sets that are emphasized by the different, or are growing out of the different institutes. So we can't start teaching things they won't need until we know it, and we want to make sure they are ready when that need does exist. So I think that's one challenge as we look forward to this big emphasis on new technologies and implementation of those. Those first couple bullets. Another aspect is that as they're doing a lot of research, the technicians are a little bit different than the production technicians. We'll need some different skill sets, but certainly there may be opportunities to train research technicians, not as many, but for the development in this development phase, as well as ultimately the production technicians. And we've always like to point out to the institutes that we need, there's more and more technicians per engineer in the production environment as time goes on, as we automate more and more of our production activities. And that's
okay.
it for me.
Thank you, Marilyn. I noticed that there is a blast from the past, a message from Twilight Zone. Magnum PI has a very interesting question there. He wants to know if there's going to be more than 14 institutes. And yes, the plan was to have more than 14. If there are going to be more, they will come out as White House announcements and or through the agency that's going to support it. There is a caution here. If you are thinking about becoming involved in a new institute, a lot of times the folks that are developing the institute ideas don't quite have the idea of how the workforce development is going to interact. So you should repeat to them, and they should repeat to you, that a granting or a matching requirement is there, and that both the institutes and the ATE are federal and they don't count for matches. So as to the ones that are in play, the 14 that are in play, their funding is very, very solid. They are going to be longtime players. So if you're thinking about getting involved with them, it's full speed ahead. You need to do that. All right, I don't see any more questions popping up. Wait, Russ, Russ came in and disappeared. Russ asked about the CC membership. So I believe I will turn it back to, oh yeah, Russ's came through. Okay, we are interested in the Army FLATE CC. Oh, very good. I don't know where Russ is from, but that plan is moving forward. It's the idea there was that we would have a college, community college summit or technical college summit with those colleges interested in Army's mission. The status of that, it is in the Institute's review process, and they are coming back with an answer. And I'll flip the microphone over to Marilyn to see if she has something new. But we're almost.
I'll just add that, just to compare to what to what Rebecca talked about for the different calls, there was the Army Institute put out a quick response call or something to get a few projects going early, which is they were just funded this winter. And we responded with our partner at the University of Florida to host this technician level workforce summit. So this was a response to a call. Although we didn't make the response ourselves, we partnered with a university who's a research partner of that institute to work on the community college level workforce component. So there's all kinds of different models. I guess that's the key thing, is that you need to investigate ones that you're interested in as to how they're set up, and find the best way to interact, because there's just slight differences in how the organizations are set up.
Okay,
And
Russ, I got it. Russ, you're at Foresight, and we will get back to you offline when we know more about the finality in that. We are out of time. I want to turn it back to Janet, because she is the only one that can take us offline in style.
Hello, everybody. Thank you for joining us today. We really want to keep in touch with you and to learn what you thought of this webinar. So we would like to, if you wouldn't mind, just taking a few moments to complete the survey as we complete today's webinar. I'm going to launch it now. Let's just do this. It should have come up. And we thank you for joining us, and this will end our webinar.